Hi, Gaye DeRusso with the Majestic rider. I just taped all this and then realized the pivot wasn't on. So we're going to try and do it all again. Hopefully I won't forget what I was showing you. So what I'm here today is to show you some groundwork that you can do with your horse in the winter months. You can also do this with young horses that you're not riding yet. So it teaches the under saddle stuff without you on their back. And so that way when you do start riding them, they already know a fair amount of things, right? He's like, again? I'm sorry. We got to do it again. So, what things do I teach my horse on the ground? So one is lateral flexion, and you've seen me do lateral flexion and vertical flexion under saddle, but I do it on the ground first. So what I do is I come on the side of the horse, I take the rope and I put it up over their neck. He's like, we just did this. I know, buddy. And that's just to hold the rope up there, and then what I do is grab it halfway down and I turn his head to the side. All right. If they keep it there too long, which they do as they get better and they understand this, then you just push it back. Then I grab the rope halfway down and I do it again. If the horse is not understanding, they're spinning around, you're having problems, you're dancing around, you're like, you're not getting it, you take a little cookie, and then as you pull on the rope, you give them a little treat. And that'll help them to actually figure that out quite quickly. So now let's do the other side. Now I usually do that anywhere from 3 to 10 to 20 times if the horse really doesn't know. But once they know how to do it, then it's usually just about 3 times. Okay. So same here. So pick up halfway down, pull his head back. Now again, he's making it look really easy, but in the beginning he was spinning all around. And with him, he's a very mellow horse, and he's not very sensitive, and so I had to get his attention, so I used those cookies, and that worked really well. Okay, so that's your lateral flexion. Now you can hook a rope here, and you can ask them to do vertical flexion, and that means bringing their nose down, okay? But I didn't bring any reins or anything in here, and I don't want to tie these on. So you can just go like this. You can put a little pressure on one side, like your lateral flexion, a little pressure on the other side, and then wait for him to bring his nose in. And this halter has little knots in it, so it applies more pressure than a nylon one would. And anytime he starts to give, I just give a little release, and then we try it again. So I'm pulling a little way one way and a little on the other way. But if I wasn't lazy, I would go get reins and do this. And as soon as he gives a little bit with his nose, then I release. And you just do it over and over again until you get the horse tucking his nose in. Now, some horses will throw their heads when they do this, so it's best to do it with reins. I know he's kind of a mellow guy, so he's not going to do much. And especially since we just went through this whole routine, I know he's not going to have a fit. All right, other things you can teach is to bring their head down from holding pressure on the clip. So you just hold. As soon as they give a little bit, you let go. And you can give them a word with it too. You can say down or whatever you want. Okay, but that'll help you. So if you need to bridle like a big horse like this, you can do that, and then you can put the bridle on. Okay, when I want them to pick their head up, I say okay, and I pick it back up. Now, if I want him to put his head down from pole pressure, I push back here through his ears, and as soon as he gives, I release. And then you do it again and again, and release. If they're not getting it, you can do it the rope also. And the other thing you can do if they're not getting it is just take a cookie and put it down here, which we don't have, we're just pretending, and they'll follow the cookie. And then they'll start associating that when you do this, there's a cookie down there if they put their head down. And if they won't go, you let them smell it and just keep tempting them to put their head down, okay? But especially with big horses, it's important that you can control their head so you can get to their ears and other things if you're having any problems, okay? So that's lateral flexion and vertical flexion. The other things we teach them is to move their hindquarters because it helps me with the turns with lunging. And I teach him first with the stick. With dull horses, he's a little bit dull. I use a fiberglass stick, and my string fell off. It broke because I broke it. And because you want something firm enough that if you tap them with it, they're going to feel it and move. If the horse is very sensitive, you can just use any little whip or dressage whip will usually work pretty well. So what I'm going to do is turn his head. I'm going to wave this stick towards his hindquarter until he steps over. Good boy. So we'll do it one more time. So I'm going to turn his head just a little, and you'll see I'm bending my body because that gives him a cue that I'm going to ask him to move. So we're a little close to the pole, so I'm going to move him forward, and then we're going to try the other way. So I'm going to pull his head, look at his hindquarter, and wave the stick. So I kiss, that means move to him. And I'm very clear, anytime I use that kissing, it means move. So try not to kiss by accident or cluck by accident if that's going to be your cue. Okay, so we're going to do it again. Good boy. So he's already got that down. Now, I do it with the stick first because it helps make your horse more sensitive. So when you go to do it with your finger, it becomes much easier. So now what I'm going to do is that's disengaging his hindquarters, which also is called a turn on the forehand under saddle. So we're going to do the turn on the forehand from the ground. So what I'm going to do, we'll go on the side that you can see me better, is I'm going to turn his head a little bit to the right, and I'm going to take my thumb, push it into his side, and ask him to move over. So that's our turn on the forehand right there. Hi, yeah, that was good. So now we're going to try it again. So turn his head, push with my thumb, and now this horse has become very, very light where he was not light at all before. I really had to get after him to do those things because he just didn't really have a lot of respect and he had no groundwork, so it's not his fault. So now we'll do it the other way. So I'm going to pull his head to the left, and I'm going to touch him with my finger. And he already knows because he's now established, like when she starts bending over and moving towards me, I'm supposed to move my hindquarter. So I'm going to pull, push. Now if he doesn't go, I just kind of wiggle my thumb or your thumbnail into their side. Good job. So that's disengaging your hindquarters. Now we're going to go to moving the shoulders, which is a turn on the haunches under saddle. So I'm going to use this fiberglass stick, and if he's not moving, I put the heavier part on the stick where he's not moving. So if his shoulders aren't moving, I'm going to kind of push on him with this end on his shoulders. If I need his head to move and his head's not moving, I'm going to turn it this way. As you use this, you're careful where your hands are and where the stick is so you don't hit your horse in the eye by accident, okay? So what I'm going to do is create energy and kiss and ask him to move his shoulders over. Good boy. Now, this direction off the right is not as good. He tends to move his hindquarter, and that's okay because he just learned this the other day. So if he's not going, then I might kind of bump him with the stick in the shoulder. So let's go the other way. Okay. So we're going to create energy. So this direction, he's much better. They start to walk away, I just pull. Oh. Oh. Good boy. So this gets control of your horse's shoulder. It's very good for pushy horses because they try to manipulate you with their head and their neck, and they push on top of you. So once they learn this and they respect you, then when you go like that with your hands, they're like, oh, okay, get out of your space. I get it. All right. So now we're going to try and do it like my leg is on his side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this part of the stick to just push on his side, and then I'm going to use this rope as the reins to help me control him. So I'm going to push on his side. Good boy. Whoa. Push on his side. So I'm just kind of bumping him. Every time he does the right thing, I take this off. Oh, good boy. Now there he moved his hindquarters, so we're going to keep bumping him until his shoulders move. Good job. Now we're going to try it the other way. Sometimes we get too close to the camera, so we got to move a little bit. Okay, so again, I'm trying to get his back feet to stay still and move his shoulders. This is his side that's not as good, so he might move his hindquarters some. So I'm pushing his head. So again, when we do it under saddle, good boy, our leg is right at the girth. So that's what I'm doing here, and I can tap him in the shoulders if he's really not going. And you'll see I'm kind of using my hand a little bit too to push here and push here. Now he's moving his hindquarters. He's like, I don't get it, Gaye. Good job. So we don't expect perfection in the beginning. We just want him to kind of get the cue, and there, aw, poor baby. He's like, this is hard, and I had to do it twice. Just to show all your followers. But as you do it, you want to end when they're doing it somewhat correctly. So that wasn't perfect. He still moved his hindquarter, but he moved his shoulders also. It wasn't just his hindquarter, so that was pretty good. So we got the turn on the forehand, turn on the haunches from the ground. Now we're going to do our side pass. So I use the fence to block them. I'm going to steer them by holding underneath the halter, and then I'm going to use my stick just a little bit behind where the girth would be to make them go sideways. So these are your cues. For the turn on the forehand, you bring your leg back a couple inches behind the girth. Okay, so let's say 3 inches. Turn on the haunches, where we're moving the shoulders, I keep my leg right at the girth. Okay. When I do the side pass, just bring your leg back a couple of inches behind the girth. So say 2 inches, okay, instead of 4 inches. That way the horse knows when your leg's really back, they move their hindquarters. When it's in the middle, they're supposed to side pass, and when it's at the girth, then they're supposed to move their shoulders. You have to do it the same every single time until that horse has that figured out. So just having your leg a couple of inches different will move different body parts. So if your horse is trained and you don't know that, you might be asking for the wrong thing. So they're very smart. People think they're not smart. Well, I can tell you, if you pushed on me in 3 different spots, I wouldn't make the connection, but they do. All right, so let's get organized. These long ropes are great, especially if your horse cast or something, but when you're doing stuff like this, it's a little harder. So I am going to push his head a little that direction, and I'm going to bump him right here. Good boy. Now, gaited horses, and especially the walking horses, kind of side pass in 2. They do their front end and back end, or their back end and their front end. And then over time, as they get better, then they move their whole body together. Quarter horses are very stiff, where these horses are very loose and flexible. So quarter horses will just kind of side pass together because that's easier for them. But these guys, they go like this. And so over time, he's like, can I get out of work? So over time, you're trying to get his body to all go together, but you don't expect that in the beginning. So it's fine if they move in 2 parts to start. All right, so let's push them over. And so the kissing means move. Good. So that's pretty good. I did a lot more before, but I don't want to torture this poor guy. He's being such a good soul. So now we're going to try it the other direction. So I'm going to hold the halter. Don't eat my hand. And we're going to push on his side. Good boy. So every time he moves over, I take the stick off. That's his reward, is to take the pressure off. And again, you could use your finger. He's a little dull, and I have the stick, so why not use the stick? Good boy. Now, just doing these things, you did a good job. When the horse is tied up, when they're in the cross ties, pushing them back and forth, if you use your hand where you would when you ride the horse, so you put your hand where your leg would be, they'll learn these things much quicker, and you'll get up there and go, he didn't know how to side pass, but he does now. Who taught him that? Well, you taught him because you did it in the cross ties when they were on the ground. So the more you use these cues, the more they understand stuff. See how when I reached up towards his ears, he just started putting his head down? Because he's like, oh, she's going to push on the top of the head, and that means put my head down. So you can teach him so many of the things that you do under saddle on the ground. It's less frustrating. You don't got to tack up. You don't need an hour. You can do 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and teach them different things. So, but you want to practice them. So don't teach them say you have 5 minutes a day to work with your horse. Don't teach them turn on the haunches one day and turn on the forehand the next day, because they'll be confused. Do your turn on the forehand first, because it's easier, and do that for a week or 2 in a row. And when they can do it really well, then you can start to turn on the haunches, okay? But you want to teach one thing and teach it in a row until the horse has it. And then after that, you remind them of it. So you do it just once or twice, and then you move on to the next thing. So you keep practicing what they know, but then you start adding on. But if you do too many things at the same time, they will confuse them all together. They'll be like, I don't know what to do. So they'll be doing the turn on the forehand, the side pass, and they just interconnect everything. Okay? So now we're going to do what's called the sending exercise. I think I have this in another video. You send your horse in a direction, you turn them, you send them the other way. It gives you control. It helps you in case you want to send the horse into the trailer and you don't want to get in the trailer. Or say you want to work them through water and you don't want to get in the water. Once they know this exercise, then you can send them through it and you don't have to get into that area. So when they're difficult, they're not a sensitive horse, they're dull, I use the fence to block them, because the fence will help you. That way, if they keep trying to run past you, you can kind of get out in front with your stick, stop them, and then they'll, run into the fence. If they don't stop, then you can turn them. But you want to make sure before you do that exercise that your horse respects the rope, they understand how to turn, they understand how to back off from it, and how to turn their hindquarters. Because if you just go out and do this and they don't know how to turn their hindquarters yet or their shoulders, it's much more difficult. And you're going to have to pull, it's going to be frustrating, and they might kind of go over the top of you. This is a good position to show you. So he's a Tennessee walking horse, if you couldn't figure that out. Tennessee walking horses stand really weird. Some of them are more flexible than others. He is super flexible, right? So he's just standing all cockeyed, and that makes people think something's wrong with him. It's not. It's just some walking horses are a lot more flexible, and they stand with all their feet going in different directions. He's very straight-legged. In other words, he doesn't do a whole bunch of crazy stuff with his feet. He's kind of like this, but you'd never know it from the way he's standing. And just because he's flexible, it's comfortable for him. So he doesn't mind standing all cockeyed. So if you have a walking horse and your horse does that, don't worry about it. That's just them, right? You're just very flexible. Yes. Okay. So let's go over here and let's try the sending exercise. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I am going to point the direction I want him to go to the left. I'm going to wave my stick on the left side of his neck. If he didn't go, I would tap him with it, and then once he gets over by the fence, I'm going to pull on the rope, look at his butt, and that should help him to turn. Okay, so here we go. So we're going to send him out. I'm going to drop the rope. Oh, he got it a little bit before I did. So we've done this a bunch of times in a row. Pull on his head, look at his butt. And now he does it very well. But in the beginning, he tried to run into the fence and do all sorts of stuff. So this direction, oh, good. So see, there he started to go forward, and then he's like, oh, I made a mistake. So pull on his head, look at his butt. So in the beginning, I had to block him with the stick. I had to get the stick up in his face so he run over the top of me because he just didn't understand. So pull on his head, look at his butt. And if they really won't turn the butt, you might have to get after them or give them, a big tap in that hindquarter so they swing it around fast, and that's what I had to do with him. Well, each horse has two sides. One side's always smarter and more sensitive than the other side. So his left side is smarter and more sensitive than his right side. And why is that? Probably because people worked him on his left side the whole time. And that's what people do. They do everything from the left. The horse gets used to it, and they don't have anything good on that right-hand side. So we want to make him even. So this is great for him. Okay. Now, he's a slow guy, and I had already done this before, so I'm not going to do it really fast. But you can do it fast if you have a lazy horse and you want to get after him. Just know that the, walking horses kind of swing their back ends all over the place. But you see how he can cross his legs and do all this funny stuff just because he's a walking horse, right? So that's our sending exercise, but it's a very helpful exercise to teach your horse as well. But again, I always do it in building blocks. So I start with the lateral flexion, I do the vertical flexion, then I teach them to move their hindquarters, then I teach them to move their shoulders, then the side pass, and then I start doing the sending exercise. And so that way too, when I lunge him, I can just pull on him, turn him, send him the other direction. I don't got to go out there and change the direction or anything. He just does it for me. Okay? So hopefully that'll give you some stuff to do with your young horse, and that'll give you some stuff to do in the winter. You don't need a big space. You can do most of it in the stall. Even the sending exercise you can do in the stall. You can do the side passing in the stall and moving their shoulders and their hindquarters. Remember, don't forget about walls and fences because they help you. So if you're having a problem, your horse won't understand, use that fence to kind of block them. You have your stick to help you, but if that horse is coming over the top of you, use a fence or a wall so they can't go over the top of anything, and it will help them to turn. Okay? So hopefully that gives you some fun things to do. You got to see Blackie here. And he's a sweet soul, but you see, he just went off to sleep. He's like doing this that many times. That was a lot, Gaye. But he is a sweet horse, and he's going to be great. You can see he has all the groundwork, and he's not afraid of much of anything under saddle. And we're getting you back in shape, and then hopefully find him a nice home. All right. Hope that helps everyone out there.